The low black pupils. We have black pupils, whites of eyes. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes simultaneously, so we can discern. We have the same. We have a distinct species from other species' bodies, so we can discern. Even completely different species have individual group difference /s in species volume. There is a hyper invisible that comes with the invisible but still discernible. It is the same one that is why and how. We need more than one word for a verb. It is why and is how. All subject /s are grouped, individually grouped in together. That's the only way we could simultaneously to an extent. For example, there is a hyper extent that comes with extent /s that we have been, are being, and that are to come. Boxing is fun, one way, but that is all. All the sciences are abridged. So, in other words, and use /s of that is by a breaching method that knew a certain type of victim /hyper victim would increasingly have and have had other things, others ourselves communicated than would be and would have been communicated for the sciences unabridged. And this is relative to how and to why we were supposed to get the Constitution unabridged. The plan of James Madison and with the founders behind him, they went and got George Washington to agree to that plan. And then they went and counter-extorted at 13 locations to make the first 13 colonies. But worse than just slavery as it was defined on paper, not just for the invisible but still discernible reasons, or the hyper-invisible but still discernible reasons /s, like the breaching method, like nature's demonstrations of that breaching method, then too. Because it employed other things others ourselves blame for what it caused. Where that is discernible is where and how, even though it was sickly distinctly, northern colonies and southern colonies, having been sustained since before America's founders were born, other things, others ourselves, is what is blamed. It has been blamed right through our schools for things like slavery. In other words, this is why how people aren't paying attention in classrooms, sickly distinctly, or when they're paying attention too, they're getting hurt that way. These sciences are abridged. You know, they have the behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. One of the things the branches recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. See, when you're being extorted by people, they attach me to fake names, fake words, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. They use as shown to certain type of forgiveness is to not leave out the breaching method with blame. For example, what caused slavery? And if when we were arguing, in other words, we shouldn't be arguing. We should be using premises treatments. For example, we're not supposed to leave out how the industries were our value nature systems that were our criminally foreign influenced. But see, we had the formal identities of the law roles with that only allowed. If someone's going to fight about that, you're fighting against the breaching methods system of law, which was designed to measure and maintain us from abroad, but their own countries from abroad too. This came from semi-ancient times. This effectively has complete remote possession of the syntax of all groupings of humanity, no matter how powerful they get. They're going to have to use, even if they don't use the word humanity, they have to use the value of it as criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments and or negative treatments. This breaching method is increasingly reliant upon keeping other things, others, or selves blamed for the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, in nature. Why and how, for example, in Russia and in America, the suburbs were designed for torture and extortion and to make a tactically denatured ground while making it a theater, not realizing being increasingly reliant upon food resources and means from other locations and has other names, tactical ulterior from how the species body has employed our names and differences for the discernment of its own hyperdifference. Just like your own complete identity is coming to, from, as, with, and for all parts of the tip of your nail. The tip of your nail is not your complete identity, but it is anyway. And what kept and keeps that true is how every identity, even if one is made up, has an inseparable relationship to that unabridged system that is the hypersimultaneous. Science, true and honest and sane, shows the need to discern how there is a discernible, distinct nature of simultaneous nature, the hypersimultaneous. And how, for example, being an individual is being a sequence nature relative to the species body of autumn and to the groupings of the species body of autumn, while it is simultaneously being a simultaneous nature. And if you isolate one, it makes it like the others is there. But nature shows us not only is it distinctly itself as the invisible, but still discernible. And as the hyper invisible, but still discernible. Everything is that, but it is distinctly that for the invisible, but still discernible relative to its identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, where value equals nature as value / value as nature, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously / hyper-simultaneously. And this is where and how more and more forever nature or more and more hyper-simultaneous nature is being made. And the ancients revealed this individually grouped in together. And history remember, they couldn't believe we'd forget how to cause evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. So if one uses the short words regarding things that shouldn't even be debatable, people shouldn't be able to get away with debating. For example, that we have black pupils, whites of eye, and that there's significance of that, which we can be used to discern how experts on such things, like with culture, no matter what color they claim to be or what, in other words, all tactically have left out how nature communicates with this. Left out how the industries, how the prisons never stopped having collusion /S. Like what witch trials are about. You guys have blamed other things, others, ourselves. Then science shows us what to blame witch trials on. No matter who made them up, too. One of the things we know they're about instantly is criminal insidiousness. Because we know what was standing, speaking for order, speaking for justice and freedom, while laws had slavery of everyone sickly distinctly, a torture, extortion, slavery method, 3 ways. Manifest as from our perspective, from this perspective of the individual, it's an identity theft, fraud, slander method, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, as the method that generated all the other methods of insidious fact-cheating natures. Therefore, more and more physical wrongdoing, predicate acts, acting natures. Now, there are predicate acts with facts, like wire crimes. News locations of Connecticut have wire crime acts and methods at their locations and with names next to them. And they already had that as collusion/S with all kinds of natures of cases against all ages of fact treatment nature. So originally and still we had means to discern how people pretend to care for things like the value of their oaths that they took. Excuse me. Excuse me. And or the validity of their premises treatments or of the premises treatments of others. On a mass scale, the intelligence community, like cyber police, with the FBI, CIA, they are recorded to an extent conscious and self-value, being used remote self-value, that they jump in other people's conversations dishonestly. And they tell people that, take your medications. They say things like that. The agencies, Harvard Hospital is increasingly recording, confessing, and making demonstrations. There are demonstrations tied to a whole bunch of people from Harvard Hospital have wire crimes with their families and rolls with houses with that and pretended fake motivations of people who mention such. And they hurt you other ways if you don't. These are people involved with the corrections offices and the judicial branch offices with predicate acts with facts between each of the campuses. Now, to discern this, I have to show you how it's recorded, how on and off, and the names next to each of the campuses I went to had been influenced to make fake ties to me, fake communications to be completely made up. In others, they just speak things to make it look like you're having a conversation. That's also involved with how the police steal the words of other police to keep cover up for their uses of their difference. Same thing with the courts, identities with the courts, all natures of them. Their difference is being and hasn't been employed by that breaching method which employed black pupils and whites of eyes through ourselves, employed for it to blame other things, others ourselves, for what uses other communicated. The nature communicates increasingly at all locations/S, where it answers best all questions, and where it is, where its identity, relationship to itself, and the increasing value of that simultaneously is the question in the form of the tip of your nail has no question, but your own. Just like our temporary identities. We have question, but it's no question but its own. But we have been systems tactical ulterior from the hypernative identity of value/value progression. So also they have the rules with the intelligence of the Native Americans. Then they want to defend their identities as Native Americans, but they have collusions with the psychiatry. They have collusions with the real causes of criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, readings of laws and of precedents and of reality by the formal identities of law, the private ones, and by the syntax of nature of people A through Z and the journalists. So the hyper-evidential, these are things we learn through our lives. Before there were computers, the news had been putting music and then speaking about murders and bridge subjects. And know how there's a gang of 7 or a gang of 8, which implies and demonstrates just because someone becomes a representative or a senator, even, that doesn't mean that they know all the things that have to be kept secret. In other words, because they obviously not even because they're secrets, it's because if they bring this up, they bring this up. Not just in America. America and Russians have suburbs that are archaeological evidences and demonstration of forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, not even realizing self-valued collusion /s with that which is fluent through our nations. All groupings of humanity too. No matter how powerful a group or individual could get, nature is going to continue, even if we all agree together that every country A through Z, if we agree to stay these systems tactical ulterior from its own, it's only capable, in other words, only capable readings of statutes left out exceptions, exception nature. Like how they're increasingly planting fake exceptions, exception nature. Self-valuing that when they make naive A, therefore B, treatments at formal legal locations and other. So there are a whole bunch of people, in other words, Weathersfield. In other words, Weathersfield adults who were kids that went to schools with me. I know I was only nice to everybody. In other words, there are people planting fake conversations, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me into databases. These are people with the religious locations too, as one of the things that was unique to themselves, insidious uses of their religions and of the with when they were planting evidences. Increasingly, people tied to a former Mayor Gold and a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, have been planting evidences on off the campuses and next to the side of parks, and with people with digital child offenders more. Now there are women judges and prosecutors and victims advocates that have roles with such. Then they want, in other words, women and girls are sickly, distinctly damaged and prevented freedom by this breaching method that makes them pretend other anyway or be sensed, even if as a group, even if as everyone, Black pupils. If we all, the entire species, agrees to help or hurt the difference of male or female, tactical ulterior from how it would want us to understand that, it will demonstrate with negative value nature progressions acts nature. But in other words, rather than affording nature's demonstrations in hyper intelligence, its voice, free speech roles, faking it, pretending not to realize, are being used to sense for the breaching method that was using computers and identities of relativity to that. Known where how other things, others, or selves were propagated and maintained self-cultivated to appearance, motivations for things like for things relative to answers that come with revelations, like why and how they could blame other things, others, or selves, then the breaching method for things like slavery, and then defend logic, pretend and nature's pretending not to realize and pretending their motivations. So they have us in fake conversations with our fellow students. Clearer than day, kids in the suburbs across America could discern when we see, even in a movie, like a little kids watch movies and they see shots of New York City with the people stacking, tactically denatured. The suburbs were designed tactically denatured to measure and maintain everyone individually grouped together from abroad. Roles hurting each other for itself and or helping each other for itself, which needed collusion /s with its identity of value /value progression breaching method system, which means it needs to keep its relativity to positive and negative, the causes of it, and motivations for roles with that. Tactical theory from our nature's identity has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. So there are cartoon versions. There's a cartoon value nature system with cartoon versions, hyper additional, of the human species body / IES, and where New Yorkers are manifest the way they are, still prevented free speech and voice, still prevented representation syntactically, while others pretended simultaneously, excuse me, for this being and having been a method that knew how nature communicates also with the difference, for example, of how elderly, middle-aged, and kids, there is a hyper difference that would and does amazing things and has roles. In other words, kids long to pay attention to the details lower too, because not just because they're shorter. In other words, an adult's taller. Nature shows us it has 5 parts of its complete identity. There are also 3 ways grouped. Excuse me. And this is also hyper intelligence and relativity to location / S. So I can prove evidentially because the branches of government and their family members have roles with their educators also, with the different departments, and with even with high schools, middle schools, grammar schools, even younger, for this method, where there is a maintained self-value, tactical pseudo-education, tactically delusions wrought. Excuse me, and mass reliance on criminally foreign influence, factor, nature, quality aspects, and the premises treatments, for example, sequence shifts, self-valued readings of histories, summaries of history, tactically, criminally foreign influence, and tactically delusions wrought. There are proofs that, in other words, there are people since before Obama and Trump were in office, since before the Clintons were in office, before Bush, before demonstrably it was here before all presidents that were alive, because this rolls with the singular method that was demonstrably here since before our founders were born too. The suburbs were designed before our founders were born. There are houses that were built in the 1600s. The Civil War, the beginning of it was until 1860, and slavery was still entrenched in North America and South America. Northern states and southern. And while there were colonies too, they either blamed, they were blaming other things, others themselves, than that which had possession of them, slaved over there, sickly distinctly too. Sickly distinctly and non-distinctly, where it's functionally, where that's left out. It's functional for the breaching method to have left out where and how we have black people's rights of eyes. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. And a breaching method assigned other to be communicated for that. And it sensed and hurt anyone, and worse than hurt them, and worse than just kill them, and everyone around them too, in other words. Not just because they said something someone didn't like. because they said things that the breaching method could sense would try to undo roles with its breaching method, which needs the people of each location, area, and state to hurt each other and or to help each other, be a unity or be an independence, tactical ulterior from how it needs. Because nature is in demonstration of it, while it's in demonstration of ourselves. And nature has relativity to positive and negative as a hypernative system. No, so we can discern it. Thank you. Please share this with Judge Napolitano. For example, the fact of that and how the branches of government prevent people short words, like from noting that they forge and switch names while fabricating evidences into databases. That's not long. And I want a response from the principal child abuser's confessions. I caught him first, and forced with more, worse than they put him in jail for. And people with the jails have rules with their crimes and criminals before they got caught, and with the body dumping spots, and against completely innocent people. Also has their roles who use that to force the principal child abuser. They also have roles with the FBI and other agencies and state police, fabricating and changing audio and video evidences and phone transcripts. In other words, no one's watching what they're doing. And the difference between them as the ones worst involved, or the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people with the campuses on off the news rolls, that difference is also used because it's using the styles of logic, nature, fact treatment, nature, premises treatment. Wethersfield Pizza has the state judicial branch offices. It has Wethersfield Police involved intercampuses with various natures of federal organized crime and child abuses, including medical, sexual, intercampuses. Let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. Let's go. Come on, Judge Napolitano. John Adam writes. Excuse me. So Ron Adams was asking to see the ceiling of my house. There's a Joshua Julian who's involved with some people who confessed him involved with some home break-ins in my area and use/s of that as federal evidences crimes with various police forms, as families involved also with a whole bunch of different countries and overt criminal enterprises, and putting kids that are not even in the same classes with them and faked and changed conversations with themselves and others on campuses into databases and with judges and prosecutors and their family members. So Ron Adams also brought up police names. Ron Adams, then you changed the names. Who was the Powell? You said Powell and Officer Powell. And see, these are people worse than obfuscating their roles with the proven principal child abuser, ones who forced it. I don't know who Ron Adams is. I know that Joshua Julian was one of the ones recorded with digital crimes, with a proven digital child offender. And there are more people with upskirts on Twitter with the FBI involved with that. And with neighbors where okay. I just did. Now tell me about Officer Powell, Ron Adams. You've been threatening me not to speak about the true things. They put this in the newspaper too. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them about the World Trade Center too. And the Wethersfield Police recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have been switching and forging names. And they have been, they do this. When one person says something, walks away, they faked conversations with me as a kid and as an adult at the police station. Never went there, had a police conversation with the police. In other words, I said something to my wife, they pretended, my wife at the time not married. They pretended I spoke to the officer. One of the ones with the name Mendez involved further with a Bob Chase, who also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Phil Cololo involved with them. He wouldn't let me read the police report. That's one of the ones who forced the principal child defender. Has something to do with a Ray Cololo, also a number of people with the name Ray Cololo as cousins of the Phil Cololo. It has something to do with their roles on the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices, and with people associated with Lance Cuddy and his brothers and family. I never met them. One time they might have taken my picture near him. There was FBI and lawyers of the FBI and Wethersfield police involved with federal evidences, crimes, identity thefts, and fraud with border countries and with names along the Park Street with Alina's Pizza and with a Daryl Sullivan, also with connections between the people next to Trinity College and CCSU with the intelligence family, down houses in the buildings there, who have roles, all kinds of predicate acts for all kinds of federal evidences crimes, federal rules of evidences crimes. There are men and women who share the name Bobby, who also have roles with prosecutors and judges on Covington Street and various police forums. Through time, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with Wethersfield interbranch family members, also with those locations in Hartford and New Britain, and names connected. Not just connected to the guy with the boxing on Zion Street. It has something to do with the report. I don't know if that was real or made up too, about the murder of Greg Kyler, involved with the judges and prosecutors and criminal enterprises and foreign and domestic military and people who were planting evidences in West Hartford before the World Trade Center attack and in Britain, and as the people involved with Wethersfield. It has something to do all along Hangdog Lane, Two Rod Highway, and its conjunctions, foreign and domestic intelligence, overt criminal enterprises and private ones have been stacking fake ties, fake natures of ties to people, fake motivations to screen roles with it. There's a Lenny Triglia also. I don't know him. And they tried to make a fake exception years ago. Has something to do with his roles with people with the name Cololo too, with car dealerships that are involved with the Wethersfield police confessions, forging and switching names, falsified police reports, roles with them with all sides of criminal and civil cases, in the interbranch switching of names and sequences, as timed collusions with the foreign and domestic. They have cousins named, they have a shared cousin named Scalora, is one of the ones on off the World Trade Center in the court next to it, and the places next to it. One of them is a court. And there are names on all sides of that who were brought up by the people, the police switching and forging names at Central Connecticut State University, who also planted evidences on my street in Wethersfield, and their roles with my neighbors who had been with the Zion Street and Covington Street confessions years before I had the people record, confess, demonstrate, confirm it's true. And they're also pretending it's not true in cases. So they're self-valuing how they have secrets to keep. They have nothing to do, not actual secret. They have a whole bunch of natures of industry like psychiatry. Tactically delusions rot Black people, as we know. Well, when we have a logic expert, speak on color properly. It's not spoken properly until you're led by that which has manifest black and white and exceptions. This is the way science really has it manifest. You seem to be. So anyway, Ryan Adams is part of the people involved with the chilling effect, where he's involved with a Joshua Julian and a Ray Cololo and a Mark Violet, a whole bunch of people tied to a Mark Violet with Hartford Hospital. And the names next to them, like a Demorals Market where it used to be there, and with the names next to that, in the in Iowa's kitchen in a Mayano family I never even met. I was never inside the house they had on Weathersfield Avenue involved. They have rules with the Institute of Living on the campus of Harvard Hospital with a whole bunch of judges and prosecutors and their family members planting evidences all along roads and routes and on and off campuses. Also with their, in other words, interbranch switching and forging names, and people further involved with child abusers, leaders of the kids, abuses of their kids too, because these are different natures of motivations and of crimes. So see predicate acts. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police. They've been forging and switching names. They've been planting evidences with judges and prosecutors too. Sequence shifts. They have criminally foreign influence uses of databases and systems like and motivations narratives, like how and why they're going to arrest someone with a warrant, etc. Involved also 911. They have faked audio and video transcripts with police, including with the 911 phones, as Weathersfield Police has roles with foreign and domestic military and people on off the state Connecticut judicial and corrections offices, as the names on off the World Trade Center, involved with all sides with the World Trade Center attack and their differences, black pupils. Yeah. John Adams, weren't you the one who brought up the name Judge Napolitano too? You said you were at a wedding with him. John Miano recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, has roles on off and next to, with names next to Central Connecticut State University, involved with sequence shifts with people named O'Brien and Colo and Arixian Faglione with wire crimes, mail crimes, and putting and drugs and medicines crimes, and where they're putting fake things in databases with people at Harvard Hospital. Whole bunch of people from Harvard Hospital involved with wire crimes with Weathersfield Police, falsified police reports with themselves and with their sources. And the difference of that is also used. That's why it's important to get them from the name switching and forging and to get Judge Napolitano, because New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page and the Facebook page of the principal child offender has roles with the court's family members that have been planting evidences with foreign and domestic military, also KKK, Black, and Confederate flag team. They get involved in people's business dishonestly, while having been shown needs to know that they have roles with predicate acts with facts and uses of their pens and time as sick predators, way worse than they put little kids in jail for, and create fake to make real medical conditions in kids, etc. They have all kinds of medical corruption also associated with Ron Adams, where judges and prosecutors, foreign and domestic, have corners of streets and names like this Officer Powell he brought up, and his roles with uses of Judge Napolitano's name for chilling effect, where he's refusing to identify himself, and he's changing and faking what people say when they mention predicate acts. So get used to this. Understand this phrase, predicate act, when you hear the word act. Now, these are also people on off religious locations. And these are also people that have roles with uses of differences in the counters to it, because the difference of that is also exploited relative to answers to and revelations where and how and why. All this time, everyone left out how nature communicates other with the black white and with guilt roles with it. Because when the fight and pretending it's about prejudice, it's about fake sciences. Those fake sciences, the causes of it. You guys, in other words, so it has something to do with their roles all along roads and routes, because the use of location /s has shown to need to hide live progressions preemptively, actively, and to come. And that's increasingly at the same time. These are people, the Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Transportation. There are roles with please, J.P. Morgan. There are people with the name Perone associated with you. who has the roles with investigators, and a journalist on off Fox Connecticut News, and Trinity College are involved with some murders that were simultaneously involved with a principal child abuser's campus, and people in intercities who made confessions and demonstrations on my street, like a Rob Rodriguez, and people all along Route 3 have been planting evidences, fake ties, fake nature, the ties to me. One time I mowed a lawn on that street. It was his recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, having other things tying them, like like places around where my parents' business used to be. I never seen people there. In other words, they brought that into their confessions and demonstrations of their roles as the ones with the World Trade Center attack and then Predicate Acts since to hide it. And they force sides to collusions, increasingly in confessions that are increasingly tied to people at each campus I went to. Ray Reynolds. It wasn't clear, but it's true anyways. If it wasn't that person, she doesn't know who it is. Ray Reynolds is one of the ones associated with Lynn and students from Central Connecticut State University that relative to where and how we can discern how the intelligence community is raised, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. And having already having used everything that came before them to pretend other as the breaching method shows them they need to. And shows them that it uses them remotely, criminally foreign influence, factory nature, quiet aspects of nature. You have to follow mandated law, though. Stop making things up. And with the news at the same time. So the news, please, do the mandated law. So I have to keep mentioning you little by little more. Why you brought this up. Also, the locations next to you. A Kerr family and a DeMoro family and a Colora family. They have roles with the people with the publishing locations and the communications locations. And the people involved with writing forensics and state police with Rhode Island, Vermont, Massachusetts, has something to do with the roles with the foreign and domestic military all along Route 3, planting evidences with New Britain Superior Court with child offenders, has their roles with Koreans, has their roles with Italians, with psychiatry. It has their roles that were also intercultural and intracultural rackets, where they speak for difference, where they speak for law, where they speak for the law's nature. In other words, nature, let nature speak for itself. Where they have the nature of debate, where they want to use what they know, their differences. The only reason, in other words, they have abridged sciences and roles with the characters that presents as styles of logic and nature, forced by nature itself, all incapable of defending that and of affording short words proper, let alone their protraction. So Judge Napolitano, someone please get him onto paper, or the FBI. Get him one name in sequence with the Wethersfield police involved with forging names and switching names, falsified police reports of arrays for the same arrest too into databases through time. Their roles with all kinds of, in other words, they have collusions. They can't defend that and make proper treatments at crime scenes of the worst natures. They have time collusions with the names next to body dumping spots that also increasingly got brought up by the people timed who were planting evidences and fake natures that ties to me by using appearances, by using the field to make it look like I know them. If I'm calling me a liar, if I'm at a courts pretend people are liars who are liars. They're pretending people who tell the truth are liars. And if they lie or tell the truth, they're pretending they know them in the first place. They're offensively planting evidences per use of location /S. It's very simple. So they have roles with military. In other words, on off Hartford Hospital, they have roles with the World Trade Center attack and torture before the World Trade Center attack, which is one of the things that they were shown to them, where and how they torture other people, because they were shown how they could get caught with that. They have whole mail and wire crime methods. Whole bunch of people with the name Leahy and Lombardo have distinct, non-distinct, and connected simultaneous mail crimes together too. identity thefts and frauds with the people involved with wire crimes, with the mail crimes, and with the other names. And so their roles also with the family members of judges who have been planting evidence has something role in those Connecticut boxing gyms and roles with the Trantola and Trantola with the Boys and Girls Club have roles with all kinds of probate judges. Probate judges are like judges on the spot at elderly homes where they have torture method. They lock the doors. It's like a prison. It smells in there disgusting. These are not our human beings, and they're pretending our means because they're getting paid, not just because they're getting paid. Those those real motivations are used for fake ones. Where how it really keeps the elderly home sick, the kids' campuses sick, the adult campuses sick, the fire campuses, their families are involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, offensively. People that were bullied and made fun of all their lives, they're like online, like smiling, trying to be bullying other people. They don't even know. In other words, all kinds of intercultural and cultural rackets difference. These people knew that people wouldn't be able to speak for the law properly. And then they would pretend other after they did it, and they would hide that while hiding the breaching methods roles with our laws. Yeah, Santa Claus be used. Okay. John Adams, are you there still there? No. John Adams involved with worse than chilling. He's involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with interbranch and foreign. I don't know who he is, but I know Joshua Julian is one of the ones on Facebook and YouTube, and with the Ray Colo, sequence shifting and planting fake motivations because their roles with people involved with all these different countries I mentioned. Even the ones shooting guns at each other, there are collusions here and there. Has something to do with their roles with campuses used criminally foreign influence, identity theft, fraud, slanders, time with the Wethersfield police, Wethersfield fire are in the middle of confessing and demonstrating, confirming. They have roles with federal evidences, crimes, planting evidences on the sides of my house, and with the Josh. There's an Officer Jerry Miller, who confessed and recorded with the other police forms, switching names with the Wethersfield police and the state police and the courts. They've been planting evidences on the northern side of my house. I know the same names planted evidences on all sides of my house, and their roles planting them on their sides. And they make people have conversations, like by making roles with home break-ins and time use /s of them, and then again through time. A whole bunch of people tied to people in my 6th grade class increasingly kept getting brought up tied to that. And these are people that live near Eric Klotz. And I never had a conversation with his brother, Sean Klotz. Or I never met his daughter adopted. These are also people involved with adoption and what is it? Not adoption, but it's like the other kind of way you can have with kids. All the programs with elderly kids. That's why I noted before, we're in a trap that's exploiting difference. And it's so you have to follow mandated law. Get me out for fake conversations with WFSB. Because Officer Jerry Miller also brought up an which is, even if it's not a real officer, it's a federal crime to do that. And the Wethersfield police have been fabricating evidences with people named Kerr with them, and people from other parts of town like Kerr and DeMauro, and people from the other side. It's completely with them planting evidences with the same house with the wire crimes with the Wethersfield police now, and people with the campuses that know my name, I don't know their name, has something to do with their roles with all these different countries: Afghanistan, Ukraine, Russia. In other words, it might be China. I don't know if it was China. It was a Chinese food restaurant. We call that to everything. In other words, and people with the Latino theme with that. with Town Line Drive with Eric Mike Pandolf. And Mike Pandolf, I think he has two brothers associated with it's something to do with Trinity College. With a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, tied to Ray Kalal. And confessions name tied to his name directly. And people lying off the side of parks that were planting evidences and fake motivations for it. As rolls increasingly with foreign and domestic countries planting evidences with judges and prosecutors speaking fake things in records too. A Judge Smith, I had to write a complaint about them. With that, I don't know if he's related to the Jamie Smith and the David Smith and their mother, but they have roles with some people at Harvard Hospital that work there, and with Town Line Drive, that have been federal crimes with teachers I had, and their conversations with them, and some that were simultaneously conversations with police and courts, and over that were planting evidences, time collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And even if they're with unmarked police and they're not legitimately trying to hide that, you're making me talk about this because you got the interbranch attaching me since I was a kid to fake conversations with them. And there's way worse. Simultaneously, you're not letting me speak about. And then you need to pretend other. So you need to offensively pretend to be about free speech. So you have to have natures of debate that are sick. You have to use the knowledge of good and evil to hide how. While self-valuing how the sciences are abridged, so it can be shown to anyone with a proper nature not criminally foreign influence, with thought as your natures are when you blame other things other than yourself for the breaching method that caused black and white to communicate other than they do, per the hyper simultaneous, per science proper. So you guys want to have debates about what's scientific? Your nature of debate contains premises and contains nature itself as criminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness. Not even a lawyer, not a police form. The former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their family members are also ones involved with these names. I don't know. And it has something to do where John DeMauro lives too in Old Wethersfield, and people next to the state educational department who have roles with child defenders, foreign and domestic, and former mayors, and the family members and their neighbors. Their people have conversations with. That gets them to lock them in fake. Everyone speaking to other number. So follow mandated law for the interbranch. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. Let's go. Because then we'll get to the foreign involved, and we'll get to the hyper foreign involved. All sides, stop leaking.